Well, we got some bad news, everybody. Our script for the sequel to Space Jam was respectfully ignored and rejected by the studio Warner Brothers. We felt like it was time to branch out from HoopSport.
I've never felt so insulted by an auto reply.
Ridiculous.
We spent years on that script. Years.
And
Decades even. Decades.
All of our work seems to be for naught, because Ice Jam, working title, as we had painstakingly plotted it out, is a superior film not only to the future LeBron James HoopSport,
but dare we say the original. It's an improvement.
It's an improvement on the original.
That's what we wanted. I mean, I feel like Bugs Bunny himself has given me the finger.
I can picture what that would look like. Illustrations available online at our website, HockeySport.podbean.com. We are going to give you guys a exclusive and, frankly, the only possible look at Ice Jam. And Warner Brothers, we're still listening.
We're listening. I don't know if you are.
Judging by their email, they certainly are not.
We're listening to each other.
Everybody get up, it's time to slam now. We got the real jam going
We open
down.
on a
Welcome to
panning
the Space
shot
Jam.
of a desolate, ice-filled world,
Jam.
void of life. It's a Phoenix Coyotes game. Arizona Coyotes?
Is that what they... Who cares?
Who cares? They didn't move.
No.
They rebranded.
That's true.
In an office far above the Coyotes' ice sheet, with no fans and no players, there sits a Gary Bettman, cartoonish in his look, as always, grasping a pale chalice of an unknown red liquid, looking at a map of all his new franchises that he's put around the world to grow the game of hockey, and another graph of his revenue spiking straight down as the league loses money year after year.
At the top of the bottom of this spiking graph, the newest franchise of Gary Bettman's scheme, the Mexico City Pelicans. Gary Bettman doesn't know what to do. He thought it would work. Screw the Canadian market. It's all about the American market and the Southern American market.
When he moved the Ottawa Senators to Cuba and the Toronto Maple Leafs to Argentina, he felt confident that these burgeoning large population centers with incredible ad revenue would certainly bring in a boost for the owners, specifically his favorite owners, the American owners.
But on the verge of failure, Gary Bettman looks to the ground, then looks to the sky.
In the sky, a twinkle appears, which gives Gary Bettman, in the deepest part of his dark, 3 sizes too small heart, an idea. Looking back at his phone, Gary Bettman realizes what he must do. Cut to a spaceship soaring through asteroid belts, past Jupiter, past Mars.
A space phone rings, and a spaceman answers. That spaceman? Mr. Swackhammer, owner of the Nerdlux. Hello, he says. It's Gary Bettman on the phone. Gary Bettman's got a problem, and Mr. Swackhammer's got an answer. He tried it once before in the NBA. It didn't work out. He's going to try it again in the NHL. Those Nerdlucks are going to steal some talent, and they're going to make the best gosh darn team the NHL's ever seen, and that revenue's going to go up and up and up into space.
Mr. Swackhammer looks directly at the camera and says, "For once, I won't always lose." Cut to Alex Ovechkin waking up as if from a long winter's nap in the middle of a KHL game, knocked out on the ice.
Boo! Beer getting thrown on the ice.
People yelling in Russian
vodka. A bear carcass.
to feed the live bear that's on the ice.
Ovechkin's at the lowest point in his career.
There was no room for a toothless, charismatic, barely literate Russian anymore in the NHL. He was driven out after the players went on strike. The travel of visiting teams in Kuala Lumpur and Beijing was too much for most NHLers, and they walked out. And Gary Bettman immediately replaced them with scabs who would play for cheap and not complain.
Ovechkin, with a game misconduct, leaves the ice, watches the rest of it, on a TV, drunken, in his locker room, pouring himself a White Russian or whatever that Ovechkin drinks. I assume White Russians. Probably drinking out of the Stanley Cup that he won. He stole it.
That he replaced with a replica.
He
and
still
gave
got
back.
it. That's right. He's got the real one.
Side story, that happened for sure. There's no way that the current Stanley Cup is not a replica.
Oh, no. Ovechkin and Putin share custody of the real Stanley Cup, and it's definitely like a tin replica. It's not even the same metal.
We'll get back to this later.
Anyway.
Sidebar.
Ovechkin, watching the game in his locker room, realizes something's off. All of a sudden, the puck goes into Bobrovsky's glove. He shakes, shimmers, and swags. He falls to the ground. And for the next 10 minutes of the last period, Bobrovsky's not himself.
Center ice goal, goals shorthanded, own goals. Ovechkin can't imagine what's happening. So after the game, he goes up to Bobrovsky and says in Russian, of course, "How you doing?" And with a blank, glassy stare, Bobrovsky says,
My talent, it's gone. Ovechkin rushes home, taking the bus. For the next week, Ovechkin's glued to the television, watching highlights after highlights of bold new NHL stars playing for the Mexico City Pelicans. Man, that goalie looks a lot like Bobrovsky used to look like. And that defenseman on the Mexico City Pelicans, man, he looks a lot like Brent Burns used to look like.
except bigger, bluer, and more animated. Crosby, Stamkos, McDavid, PK Subban, Brent Burns, Bobrovsky, the perfect team.
He looks at his DVD Blu-ray collection.
Wizard of Oz, Borat, Bug's Life, Serpico. There it is. Space Jam. Quick phone call to his buddy Putin, and Ovechkin's on the next flight to get to the Looney Tunes.
Ovechkin's plane hits turbulence, and as it's going down, he's all of a sudden pulled into a cartoon world. Looney Tune land.
He looks to his left, he looks to his right, but behind him, he suddenly hears, in a comic voice, "Choto Dorvacha," Russian for, "What's up, Doctor?"
Boom! Titles. Ice. Breaking over black. Ice Jam. Booyah. You're welcome to the jam. To the Ice Jam.
I think that's all we gotta give for now. I don't think we can give any more.
I think that's a really good tease. Keep in mind, listeners, we have the entire Ice Jam script written and wrought, ready to go.
So, Warner Brothers, if you guys are listening and you want to make Spice Jam, sorry.
Spice Jam's the other script that we wrote. It's starring the Spice Girls.
Oh, right. We also wrote Spice Jam. It's finally a chance for us to reunite the Spice Girls in the spiritual sequel to Spice World.
And who doesn't want to see the Spice Girls and the Looney Tunes together again? Alex Ovechkin, Michael Jordan, the whole cast is there. Anyway,
Scary Spice, Baby Spice.
It's going to be huge.
Posh Spice doesn't show up because she probably wouldn't sign on.
It was our idea to make sort of the Jam series a three-peat, a threequel.
It's all part of our cinematic
series.
Jam universe.
Yeah.
It all gets tied together. We're not going to spoil it for you guys. I think the only thing to do in a time like this is, for the first time in the 2018-2019 season, let's cue the HockeySport podcast.
Oh, season
theme
2?
music.
Anyone? Cue it good. Bingo, bongo, Roberto Luongo's injured. Booyah.